So, the road to Emmaus, let's take a stroll together. There are a couple of tables. For the younger ones, the older ones might want to take one of these home with you as well. So there are options. So for the children, if you would like to, there is on a couple of tables, I've just put some more here, a little activity pack that you can either be doing here or you can take home with you. The front page is a little story wheel, of which I have made one previously, that tells the story that we are working through. This is why, ladies, on the ladies' chat, I was trying to find the pins overnight. They cut out, there's a little pin that goes through it, and there's a starting point, and it helps kind of just talk through the story of the road to Emmaus, bit by bit, in 8 little bite-sized sections, if that's something you want to do, either here or at home. I've been scrounging the internet. Colouring sheets, there is a little maze, there is a slightly harder maybe word search and find the word in there. More than happy for you to be doing that as we're talking, but actually also love you. There's some questions and there's some other things going on the screen that you might want to help us answer as we're going through today. I've got 2 thoughts for us to take home from here today, and then I'll explain at the end how this passage just kind of helps us think about revival coming. The first thought as we're walking through is that Jesus is with us even when we don't realise it, and we've got some slides that we can just walk through as well, so they'll be on the screen as well. Jesus is with us even when we don't realise it. And also our second thought that we'll kind of just talk through is when we notice Jesus, our hearts light up and we want to share. So we read through the passage, Jessica read through the passage there. It uses the words, their hearts burned within them. And then as we go through the rest of the reading, the rest of the story, things start to change. So Jesus is with us even when we don't realise. And when we notice Jesus, our hearts light up and we want to share. I wonder whether, if we go back to the number 1-1, can we all say that together? 1-1, I know. I've been up late and not asleep long. So, Jesus is with us even when we don't realise it. Can we say it again? Jesus is with us even when we don't realise it. And 2, when we notice Jesus, our hearts will light up and we want to share. So let's say it again. When we notice Jesus, our hearts will light up and we want to share. We want to share. It's really important. So I think I've got a verse on after that, were our hearts not burning within us, in verse 32 of the reading that Jessica read out there. So, anybody can get involved with this one, but I don't know whether the kids want to have a look at the screen. I have got a spot the difference. I don't know how it's going to come out on the big screen. The bit at the top, you can have 30 seconds. 13 seconds, well, can you spot 5 differences? Should we let the kids have a go? Kids? Yeah, Jessie?
One doesn't have the houses.
It doesn't? Houses? No houses, yeah. Brilliant. Yes.
The kite's different.
The kite's different. I'm surprised Stephen didn't come up with that one first. Oh, yeah. Yep. Luke, do you see one?
In the first photo, we still got birds in the nest.
Yes, there are 2 birds, 3 birds. Yep, good. Anybody else?
Jessie.
Another one?
One of them doesn't have a dog.
One of them doesn't have a dog. Oh, good spot. What's the dog swapped for?
Yeah.
The girl. We got another one.
I think the sun has a different amount of lines. Yes.
Cool. Everybody count. No, I think they're the same. But good guess. Luke. The duck and the fish. Duck and the fish is different. Spot the differences. I've lost count. I'm going to admit, I've lost count. spot the difference. Some things are missing in one, and you have to look to find them, don't you? And have you ever missed something that was right in front of you? I mean, I don't know whether this is a question for all of us, to be fair. Have you ever missed something that was right in front of you? Now, there's one particular that sometimes I think as adults we can get this one figured, where we miss something that can be right in front of us and then we forget where it is, but it's really important. I don't know whether I'm giving you a clue how sometimes the very obvious things that we need all the time, especially when they're really lightweight like these ones, they're really important things that you can miss when they're right there in front of you. So in today's story, in the road to Emmaus, there are two people walking. They're walking with Jesus because he enters into the story and walks with them. He talks with them. He explains the scriptures to them and tells them what's been going on. He's there with them, but they miss him being there with it. They don't realise who he is. I wonder how many times in our lives we do this. We don't realise Jesus is still there with us. I wonder how you think these guys are feeling and what they might have been thinking. Now, we're going to just watch that reading in a slightly different way.
Two of Jesus' friends were walking to a place called Emmaus. They were sad and confused because Jesus had just died on the cross. Then Jesus was suddenly there. But Jesus' friends didn't recognise him. Jesus asked them what they were talking about. So they told him all the wonderful things about Jesus. They explained they were confused because they thought Jesus was going to rescue them. But now he was dead. What confused them the most was earlier that day, some of Jesus' other friends went to the tomb where he'd been buried. The tomb was empty. Jesus spoke lovingly to his friends. Don't you understand all those things had to happen? He said. Jesus had to suffer so that he could rescue you. It's like seeing a picture as you put a jigsaw together. His friends felt excited and comforted. It was getting late in the day, and Jesus' friends asked him to stay and eat with them. When they sat down to eat, Jesus took the bread, broke it, and gave it to them. At that point, they realised it was Jesus they'd been talking to. Jesus disappeared, and they hurried back to Jerusalem to tell all the other friends that this amazing thing had happened.
Obviously, that's Jesus, not Jesus, or Jesus. Sometimes just hearing things in a different voice and a different format can help us pick words out of it. I don't know. I just loved that when I was looking at it. I wonder how, or can we think from watching that and the reading that Jessica read through, there are some words in there that help us understand how they were feeling. Back in my slides, I've got the passage again with some words highlighted as a clue. How they were feeling. How were they feeling in this? Disappointed. Despondent, yeah? Yeah. Hopeless, yeah. And it's interesting. This is a story that I know really well. But you know, sometimes when you just go back into it again and spend a bit of time and then you just think, oh yeah. I know that this is the same day as the resurrection. But then reading back through it again and just looking into it, it makes you think, no, this is the same day as the resurrection. This happens later on that day. So where it says in verse 13, now that same day, when you read the rest of the passage before it, you're reading about the women going to the tomb and finding it empty and Jesus appearing to them. So that same day, the day of the resurrection, so they've just gone through Good Friday, they've seen Jesus die, they've seen him taken to the tomb, They've heard these reports about the fact that he's risen, but no, he's only appeared to a few people and then he's disappeared. And so they're in this place of hopelessness about he was saying all these things, but we don't see it happening. And it's interesting that that's the point where Jesus meets them. He meets them in that despair, in that place where they're kind of just not understanding where things are going. Did I highlight something on the next slide as well? No, yeah. But we had hoped is kind of another one of those phrases that picks out that kind of sense of maybe kind of not understanding what's going on. We had hoped, but what they're seeing is, but what we had hoped for, we can't understand how this is going to be happening. So the Lego men were kind of like, I don't know if you saw the faces on the Lego men, kind of Lego helps you visualise it a bit in a different way. They kind of picked the faces that were a bit like, the shocked, the kind of confused faces. Confused questions. They would have been walking sadly. Now, this is where everybody gets a moment to be a little bit creative. So if you're not sat at a table, you might want to sit at a table unless you don't want to do this. And I've introduced Lego. You're going to get maybe 8 minutes, and the kids might want to come in on this, to create with Lego. And again, I think there's a slide that picks out some of the options. Just as a suggestion, there should be 4 or 5 options on a slide. Part of this scene, so you might want to grab a base plate and do a couple of disciples walking down the street. You could pick out Christmas trees to make your street scene a little bit more realistic. You might want to grab a different base plate and build a bit of a house and have them sat around having a meal. I've got windows, you can put some windows in it. I've not put them around the tables. You can come and grab a few bits and go back and have a few minutes, and then we'll have a look at what you've built, and maybe you can, if you want to, just say what you've built and why. These two are ready. There was also a random selection of Lego people, so I'm very interested to see who appears in your road to Emmaus. Might expect that. 3, 2, 1, go. The adults may engage.
Can I be the judge?
You can get involved and do it. Does anybody want to show what they've made? Excellent, brilliant. Well, Rich has taken some photographs. We will get those up later. We'll share those out so you can all see them, and everybody who's not here can see them as well. So, how many of you had Jesus in your scenes? Yeah, he's risen from that scene, so he's definitely not there. And one of my questions is going to be, is anything changed in the scene? I like the fact that you've got that scene where you've kind of made that connection between the change that happens, the recognition of Jesus, and they kind of immediately go off and share what they've seen, who they've seen. And where Jesus is in there, there are points in there where they haven't realised him yet. So we're remembering again that Jesus is with us even when we don't realise it. And I love, if you were to kind of go look through the Bible that we know, how many things happen on a journey. How many of those points of kind of moments where Jesus is recognised or things happen, or there's so many journeys that people do, that Jesus does. And so many of these happenings, these conversations, these things happen on a journey. He walked, he listened, he explains, he stays. There's that kind of, there's a journey that they make. It's not just the physical feet on the pavements that they're doing, but the journey that they make as Jesus walks along with them. In the listening, as he's opening up the... What's he doing when their hearts start burning? Can anybody say what was happening where their hearts started burning? He was explaining, yeah, he was explaining. He took them back to Moses. So I sometimes have to remind myself that the disciples did not have this. They did not have this explanation of who Jesus, what he had done and all that came before. They had some of, I can't get to the middle section, they had some of the beginning bit. So he's taking them back to what they know, Moses and the prophets. He's taking them back to the prophecies, he's taking them back to what they have come through in their past. He's helping them to remember what has happened and what God has been bringing them to. And in that explanation of the scriptures, that's when their heart starts burning. In that remembering what has happened to them, in that reminding them, if we can go back to that first slide of the verses of the reading, that same day, he asks them what they're discussing. Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these late days? What things? If you just go to the next one. So they tell him who Jesus of Nazareth was to them and what they thought he was coming to do. And then, if you go to the next slide, he tells them who he is without them realising who he is, by going back to the scriptures that they know and explaining, did not the Messiah, in verse 26, did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explains to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. So he's talking about himself to them. He's talking about things that they know, but reminding them why, reminding them their history and connecting it all together. They still don't recognise him, but he's walking it through with them again as they walk. He's opening up the scriptures to them. And we talk about revival coming, but it has to start with remembering who God is, what he has done for us, and going back to the scriptures, going back to what we have now, which is in here, as that reminder of who he is and what he has done and what is still to come. When you get that in your heart will burn within you and you will be stirred up. This is what's happening on this walk. And then they go back to their house. They invite Jesus in. I don't know whether you noticed this in this bit. It's not in there, but actually if you notice it, they invite him into their house and then he becomes the host of the meal by breaking the bread. And it's in that moment of breaking the bread that they recognise him. Now, where else do we see him breaking the bread? Last Supper, which will have been the last time that he will have done that with them. And then here he is again. He breaks the bread. And in that moment of breaking the bread, their eyes are opened and they see who it is. They see the Saviour in the midst at that point. They listen to him, they spend time together, they share food, and in that sharing food. I think that's actually also a really wonderful thing about what the church should be like. That we're listening and learning together, we're spending time together, we're sharing food together, and we see Jesus revealed as we do that. And people see Jesus in us as we do that together. So there's a verse that I want to just remind us of. And it's, surely I am with you always. I don't know whether does anyone like actions? Should we do an action? Surely I am with you. And let's go always. Yeah? Surely I am with you always. Not written down where that's from. Matthew 28:20. There you go, thank you. Surely I am with you always. And that recognition that even in the times we don't recognise him there, he is still with us. He is still walking with us. What does that have to do with revival is coming? Let's think about that journey and remember again in that journey when we've lost sight of him and we turn to his word to let it reignite our hearts, remembering what he's done for it and sharing it with others. So when they're on the road and he opens the word to them, their hearts burn. So it's revived, it's revival in them, stirred in them. At the table, as they share together, their eyes are opened and they see him and remember who he is. Now, it's not in this verse at all, but somewhere in there, as we talk about revival, Chris and I were talking about this after the prayer meeting, is there has to be repentance as well. That's whole, it's not here. That's a whole other thing to bring in. But that remembering who he is and who we are in his presence. And that where we need to, and we come to the communion table in a moment, but there is a moment where we have to say, search my heart and know if there's anything in me. And afterwards, immediately that their eyes are open. It doesn't say in this verse, they thought about it, they slept on it, they spent a week just eating and having. Immediately they got up and they went and shared what had happened and who they'd seen back with the other disciples in Jerusalem. There was no thought, it was an immediate reaction to it. And that kind of linking this into our theme of revival is coming, that actually these are already God's people. These are people who knew Jesus and who followed him already. And they had to have their hearts, they had to be reminded themselves who he is. They had to have their hearts re-stirred for him to then go out and share him with others. And I think we often think about revival as being something, we want revival in the nation. Well, we do want revival in the nation, but that has to start with the church. It has to start with us. That sense of remembering who he is, coming to his word, being faithful to it, having our hearts burn within us and wanting to go out and share that with other people around us. We see that walking through this story on the road to Emmaus. So, I'm really, really sorry, but Luke will not be happy if this Lego leaves the room. It will have to stay here. But we'll put these photographs up. And maybe if you've got Lego at home, kids, if you've got Lego at home, you might want to rebuild it and just think about this again. And as you're doing that, remember, Jesus is closer than you think. We forget him easier than he forgets us. He doesn't forget us. He wants us to walk with him and remember and recognise that he is walking with us all the time. It might be this week that you need to ask for his help in noticing him. We keep asking this question at the end of the week, where have you seen God working this week? But as you go into it, say, help me to see you around me in the everyday of every day. And ask for burning hearts. Because when we're on fire for him, if we're ambivalent, we're not interested in sharing that with people. But when our hearts are on fire for him, we want to talk about it. And that's how God's word passes, when we share his word and explain who he is to people. We can be as good as we want to be and do all the right things in all the right places and help people, but unless we speak about Jesus to them, they will not hear about him properly. We're going to leave the Lego builds out. Kids, it'd be great if you thought you could maybe share the story with somebody this week. We are going to sing Waymaker because he's there even when we don't realise it. And then we're going to go into a time of communion. But actually, How, and again, I know this story so well, but then you read it again and you think, he's broken the bread with them. And we're going to break bread together this morning and share that simple meal with each other before we go.